The plastic bags dug into his fingers as Ethan Parker, a 36-year-old single dad, climbed the creaking steps of the old apartment building. Midnight air bit at his skin, but he didn't care. This late-night grocery delivery meant rent. Money. He knocked once, then the door swung open. A face he never expected stared back at him, and in that instant, Ethan's world flipped upside down. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more videos like this. Let's begin. Asterisk asterisk. Dad, you're late again, whispered Lily, his 10-year-old daughter, tugging at his sleeve. Earlier that night when he left, he'd kissed her forehead, promising he'd be back before she fell asleep. But truth was, extra shifts like this kept food on their table. The hallway light flickered as the door opened wider. Standing there was a woman in her early 40s, sharp features, eyes rimmed with tears, and dressed in silk pajamas that didn't match the cracked paint of the doorframe. For a second, Ethan thought he'd got the wrong address. "You brought these?" she asked, voice trembling. "Yes, ma'am." "Order for Ms. Collins?" Ethan replied. Her lips pressed tight. Then she reached for the bags, but her hand shook so badly she almost dropped them. Ethan caught the handle quickly, steadying her grip. "Careful," he said softly. "You okay?" She blinked hard, trying to keep her composure. "It's been a night." Ethan wasn't supposed to care. He was just the delivery guy. But something in her voice made him pause. He glanced past her shoulder and noticed the living room, a lavish chandelier above, but glass bottles scattered on the table, photo frames face down, and an untouched birthday cake sitting on the counter. "Looks like a party that never happened," Ethan murmured before realizing he'd spoken aloud. Her eyes watered instantly. They didn't show up. Not one of them. The words hit Ethan harder than he expected. He knew what it was like, empty chairs at birthdays, promises broken. He thought of Lily's eyes when she asked if Grandma would ever come visit. He had lied then, saying maybe next year. Without thinking, Ethan pulled a chair closer to the counter. "Then let me help," he said. "Cake like that shouldn't go to waste." For the first time, her lips curved into the faintest smile. She nodded, whispering, "Sit." The woman, Clara Collins, poured 2 cups of coffee while Ethan unpacked groceries. Neither spoke much at first, but the silence wasn't heavy. It was almost comforting. And for Ethan, it was the first time in years someone looked at him not like a delivery man, but like a person. Asterisk asterisk. The clock ticked past midnight, and Ethan sat at the polished counter with the untouched birthday cake between them. He didn't know why he stayed. Delivery rules were clear: drop and leave. But the way Clara's voice cracked when she admitted no one had shown up twisted something deep inside him. He leaned back, folding his tired hands together. "So, nobody came? Not even family?" Clara laughed bitterly, though the sound was hollow. "Family? They only come around when they smell money. Tonight was supposed to be different. I invited them all, promised nothing fancy, just dinner, just me." She looked down at her untouched coffee. "But apparently, even my own blood can't be bothered." Ethan shifted uncomfortably, his mind flashing back to Lily's 10th birthday just a few months earlier. Balloons taped lopsided to their tiny apartment wall, cupcakes he had bought with the last of his overtime pay. Her hopeful eyes scanning the door for a grandmother, an aunt, anyone. No one came. It had just been the 2 of them, singing "Happy Birthday" in a shaky duet. "Sometimes," Ethan said slowly, "loneliness feels heavier when you're surrounded by people who should care, but don't." Clara's eyes snapped to him, her guarded expression softening. "You understand." More than she knew. They sat in silence until Ethan, almost without realizing it, slid the cake toward her. "Make a wish," he said quietly. She hesitated, then lit a single candle, her manicured fingers trembling. When she blew it out, her shoulders shook. Tears fell silently onto the marble counter. Ethan wanted to say something, anything, but instead he handed her a napkin. Sometimes kindness was quiet. "Why are you being so nice?" she asked suddenly, wiping her eyes. "You don't even know me." Ethan exhaled, rubbing his calloused palms together. "Because I know what it's like to feel invisible. And sometimes the smallest gesture changes everything." Clara studied him, then not as a stranger with bags of groceries, but as a man. His clothes smelled faintly of sweat and detergent, his face etched with exhaustion, yet there was something steady about him, solid, reliable, things her wealth couldn't buy. Her voice softened. "What's her name?" Ethan frowned. "Whose?" "The little girl whose picture you keep checking on your phone." Heat rushed to his face. He hadn't even realized he'd pulled out his phone to glance at Lily's lock screen photo, her missing tooth grin staring back at him. "Lily," he admitted. "She's 10, bright, stubborn, way too smart for me sometimes." He chuckled, but there was pride in his tone. "You're raising her alone?" Clara asked gently. Ethan nodded. "Her mom left when Lily was 4. Said she wanted more than bills and a tiny apartment. I can't give her much, but I give her all I've got." Clara swallowed hard, her mind racing with thoughts she didn't want to admit. Here was a man scraping by, yet his eyes shone with devotion. He had more love than most of the people in her world, filled with luxury cars and penthouse views. The conversation drifted, piece by piece, until Clara whispered something that stopped Ethan cold. "I wasn't supposed to be here tonight either." "What do you mean?" he asked. Her hands gripped the edge of the counter. "I had tickets booked to fly out to leave everything behind. My life looks perfect on paper, but it's hollow. I stayed tonight because I thought maybe if my family showed up, I'd have a reason not to go." Ethan's chest tightened. She wasn't just lonely, she was broken, dangling at the edge of giving up. He knew that edge well. Nights he'd worked himself raw, wondering if he was failing Lily, wondering if he could make it through one more shift. He pushed his cup aside. "Look," he said firmly, "I don't know your whole story, but I know this. Leaving doesn't fix the whole. You think I don't dream about running away sometimes? But every morning I see Lily's face, and I remind myself she needs me. You've got someone out there who needs you too. Maybe not the people who didn't show up tonight, but someone." Her breath caught, and for the first time that night, she didn't look like the wealthy, untouchable woman he assumed she was. She looked human, vulnerable, searching. "Ethan," she whispered, as if testing the sound of his name. "You've given me more in one conversation than anyone has in years." He shifted in his chair, uncomfortable with the weight of her words. But before he could reply, a small voice cut through the air, his ringtone. Lily's sleepy voice. Message played out. "Daddy, are you almost home? I can't sleep without you." Ethan's throat tightened. He stood quickly, gathering his things. "I've got to go." "She's waiting." Clara nodded, her eyes glistening again. "Of course. You've done enough already." But as Ethan reached for the door, she called after him. "Wait!" He turned, and she held out a small white envelope. "For the groceries," she said, forcing a smile. He shook his head. "They're already paid." Her fingers tightened on the envelope. "Then consider it a thank you, please." Ethan hesitated before accepting it, tucking it into his jacket. Without looking, "Take care of yourself, Clara." When the door clicked shut behind him, Clara leaned against it, pressing her hand to her chest. For the first time in years, she didn't feel entirely alone. Ethan jogged back to his beat-up truck, mind already on Lily. When he slid into the driver's seat, he finally opened the envelope. Inside wasn't cash, it was a business card. Embossed in gold, Clara Collins, CEO. His pulse quickened. He thought he'd just comforted a lonely stranger. He had no idea he'd just stepped into a world that would test everything he thought he knew about kindness, loyalty, and second chances. The engine of Ethan's old pickup roared reluctantly as he turned the key. His fingers lingered on the business card, tracing the embossed gold letters. Clara Collins, CEO, Collins Enterprises. His stomach tightened. That night had felt so raw, so human, two broken souls sharing coffee and silence. But Clara wasn't just any woman left behind at her birthday. She was someone powerful. Someone who probably had people at her fingertips, resources he couldn't even imagine. Why had she chosen to open up to him, a delivery guy with cracked hands and unpaid bills? By the time Ethan pulled into the parking lot of his rundown apartment complex, his thoughts were a storm. He slipped the card back into his jacket, quietly telling himself it meant nothing. What mattered was upstairs, behind the thin walls, where Lily waited. Sure enough, as soon as his boots hit the squeaky third-floor landing, the door opened. Lily stood there, hair messy from tossing in bed, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Daddy," she whispered, eyes tired. "You're home." Ethan dropped the bags and scooped her into his arms. "Always, kiddo, always." He carried her inside, heart aching at how light she felt. She deserved so much more than this. More than second-hand clothes, more than macaroni. Dinners, more than a father working himself to the bone just to keep the lights on. That night, as Lily drifted off against his chest, Ethan stared at the ceiling. Clara's voice echoed in his mind. "You've given me more in one conversation than anyone has in years." He hadn't meant to do anything special. He just listened. But maybe, just maybe, that was what she needed most. The next morning, Ethan returned to his routine. Wake Lily, drop her off at school, then hustle from one shift to another. He thought the night before was over, a strange memory that would fade into the blur of exhaustion. But fate didn't work that way. Late afternoon, as he wheeled his mop bucket down the marble halls of the downtown office building, a voice called. "Out, Mr. Parker?" Ethan froze. No one here ever called him by name. He turned slowly and nearly dropped the mop. Clara Collins stood at the end of the corridor. Not in silk pajamas this time, but in a tailored navy suit, her hair pinned back, her heels clicking like a metronome as she approached. Employees trailed behind her, whispering, eyes wide. Ethan swallowed hard. "Miss Collins." Her lips curved slightly, softer than the sharpness in her stride. "I was hoping to see you." The janitor, that's all they saw when they looked at him. But Clara didn't glance at the mop or the faded uniform. Her gaze stayed on his face, steady and knowing. "I owe you more than a thank you," she said quietly. "Last night, you stopped me from making the mistake I can't even put into words." Heat rose in Ethan's neck as he noticed the stares. From nearby employees, gossip would spread like wildfire. A CEO speaking personally to the janitor. "Unheard of. You don't owe me anything," he muttered, trying to push the mop forward. "I just did what anyone would have done." Clara tilted her head. "No, you did what no one else has done in years. You saw me." The weight of her words pressed against him, but before he could respond, she pulled something from her bag, a small folder. "Meet me tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, my office." Her tone shifted, crisp and decisive, the voice of a leader used to being obeyed. But her eyes still held that flicker of last night's vulnerability. Ethan opened his mouth to protest, but she pressed the folder into his hands and walked away, leaving the scent of expensive perfume and the sound of stunned whispers behind. Her dot inside the folder was an official appointment letter. Not for a delivery gig, not janitorial work, but a position: community outreach coordinator, Collins Enterprises. Salary triple his current wages. Benefits that could finally cover Lily's asthma medication. Ethan sat in the break room later, staring at the letter like it was written in another language. Why him? He was no polished executive. He didn't belong in glass-walled offices or at boardroom tables. When he picked Lily up from school, she bounced into the truck, holding up a drawing. "Look, Daddy, I drew us with a big house." He forced a smile, his chest tight. Could this folder, this unexpected twist, be the key to that dream? Or was it a trap, a game for someone like Clara to play. The following morning, Ethan stood outside Collins Enterprises headquarters, his nerves buzzing. The skyscraper loomed above, sleek and intimidating. Men in tailored suits and women in pencil skirts streamed past him while he adjusted the only clean shirt he owned. When he finally stepped inside, the receptionist blinked at him like he'd wandered into the wrong world. But after a quick phone call, she escorted him up 30 floors. Clara's office was a palace of glass and steel, overlooking the city. She rose from behind a massive desk, her expression unreadable. "Ethan," she said warmly. "You came." He nodded, clutching the folder like a lifeline. "I don't understand." "Why me?" Clara gestured for him to sit. "Because you're exactly the kind of person my company needs, and the kind of person I need." Ethan frowned. "I'm a delivery guy, a janitor. I don't have integrity," she cut in. "Compassion, honesty, those things don't come with degrees or resumes. You don't even see how rare you are, do you?" Her words landed heavy. He wanted to argue, to dismiss it. But deep down, something stirred, something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. "Why me, though?" He pressed again. Clara leaned forward, her voice low. "Because last night, when you had nothing to gain, you chose kindness. I've built an empire, Ethan, but I've lost myself in the process. I need someone real by my side. Someone who reminds me what matters." He stared at her, stunned. Was this really happening? Then Clara slid a second envelope across the desk. "And because you deserve better for you and for your daughter." Ethan hesitated, then opened it. Inside was not just an offer, but a check, enough to pay off his debts, enough to move Lily into a safer neighborhood, enough to start over. His hands shook. This is too much." Clara's gaze softened. "It's not charity. It's recognition. You gave me a reason to stay when I was ready to walk away from everything. Now let me give you something back." For the first time, Ethan couldn't find words. He thought of Lily's drawing, the big house with bright windows. He thought of her tiny voice asking if life would ever get better. And he thought of last night, the moment he chose to sit down with a stranger and simply care. That small kindness had opened a door to a world he never imagined. But with it came questions. That gnawed at him as he looked into Clara's unwavering eyes. What did she truly want from him, and what would it cost?